voice on the end of the phone in Switzerland is hesitant and nervous. Barely a week has passed since the horrific fire which engulfed the basement of the Lou Constellation Bar in Kranz, Montana, killing 40 and seriously injuring 116 others, most of them teenagers out celebrating the new year. Over the past few days, the agonizing grief of their parents has tipped into fury directed at the ski resort bar's French owners Jacques and Jessica Moretti. Yesterday, 49-year-old Jacques, who reportedly has a criminal history, with a string of offenses to his name, was dramatically taken into custody after being declared a flight risk by Swiss prosecutors. There are disturbing claims, too, that his 40-year-old wife was captured on CCTV running out of the Lou Constellation as the fire took hold, allegedly holding the cash register, while hundreds of young customers were trapped inside. A former model and actress, Jessica once worked alongside British comedian Sacha Baron Cohen. The Daily Mail can reveal more later of what happened during those final moments on New Year's Eve. More, too, of serious concerns previously raised by former staff about safety at the bar, which had a significant underage clientele, with some as young as 14, including those made by a French barman left in a coma following the horrific blaze. With pressure growing on the couple, Jacques Moretti's father exclusively told the Daily Mail over the phone this week that his son and daughter-in-law, whose own father is a retired firefighter, have been left devastated by the tragedy. "We are a family. We are united. We'll see what happens next," he said. The couple faced possible charges of manslaughter by negligence, bodily harm by negligence, and arson by negligence. They were formally interviewed by Swiss prosecutors yesterday. They have always maintained there was no wrongdoing on their part. Jessica Moretti was in tears after the interview and, speaking for the first time about the disaster, said, "It's an unimaginable tragedy. We never could have imagined this. I want to apologize. My thoughts are constantly with the victims and with the people who continue to fight for their lives." She now has to wear an electronic tag and report to police every 3 days. Meanwhile, questions are being asked about how the couple have, over a decade, built an empire in one of the most exclusive resorts in the Swiss Alps, given Jacques Moretti's criminal past. Not to mention how they managed to evade inspections for 6 years. Both born on the stunning French island of Corsica, sources there told the Daily Mail that the reason they moved to Switzerland 10 years ago was because Jacques Moretti was no longer allowed to run businesses in France. According to one who is familiar with Mr. Moretti's past, they don't ask too many questions in Switzerland. He was often in serious trouble in France, so Switzerland was an obvious place to set up. His murky CV includes 2 years in prison in France for fraud in 2005 and another spell inside 3 years later for recruiting prostitutes for an erotic massage parlor in Geneva called the Hot Rabbit, where he worked as manager. Mr. Moretti was convicted in 2008 by a court in Annecy in France for what is known as proxénétisme grave, aggravated pimping, after procuring young women in France to work in a Swiss city in 2004 and 2005. According to the court, as well as accommodating all the women in a flat he rented, he also set their rates and the number of clients they worked for. Moretti, who was still living in Corsica at the time, was caught after his phone was tapped and found guilty by magistrates of having profited from prostitution and acting as an intermediary, with other people exploiting or remunerating the prostitution of others. He also recruited women to work in other Swiss massage parlors. His most recent conviction was in 2010 back in Corsica, where he received a 2-year sentence for Social Security fraud relating to housing assistance. Moretti was born in 1977 into a long-standing Corsican family on an island which is notorious for gang-related clan violence. Raised in the village of Gisanakia, he started work in the bar and restaurant industry soon after leaving school and moved to Bonifacio, a glamorous port city on the southern tip of the island, where the rich and famous like to anchor their super yachts. In 2009, he set up a nightclub bar called Lollapalooza. It was closed in 2014, shortly before his move to Switzerland. By then, he was in a relationship with Jessica Merrick. She was born in Corsica in 1985, but, age 6, moved with her family to the French Riviera, where she later took a business course at the International University of Monaco at the end of the 2000s. According to her now-shut Facebook page, she also briefly studied at the University of Glamorgan in South Wales, as well as at Montpellier Business School in France. A hideous irony, given the events of last week, is that Jessica's father, Gene Paul Merrick, is a former senior fire chief in Kent and president of the city's charitable firefighters Friendly Society. His brother, Gene Pierre Merrick, is also a former firefighter and president of a rural forest fire committee, which, as well as recruiting volunteer firefighters, visits schools teaching youngsters about the dangers of fire. According to a family friend, her father and other relatives are highly respected firefighters in the south of France. Protecting people from fire is part of family tradition. Before entering the hospitality business with her husband, Jessica worked for years as a fashion, underwear, and swimwear model, while also acting in a series of short promotional videos in the early 2000s. In 2012, she was among a group of models hired to appear alongside comic actor Sacha Baron Cohen for a publicity stunt to promote his film, The Dictator, at the Cannes Film Festival. Strikingly dressed in a red beret, khaki jacket and miniskirt, and clutching a stunt Kalashnikov rifle, she was one of the so-called virgin guards who accompanied Baron Cohen's character Hafez Aladdin through the streets of Cannes, posing at the entrance to the Carlton Hotel and next to a camel. She and husband Jacques moved to Crans, Montana in 2015, where Jessica cut a glamorous figure in an alpine resort which is hugely popular with wealthy Europeans. He, meanwhile, was often seen driving around the town in a limousine, and more recently a Bentley, and went by the nickname Le Corse, the Corsican, a title he is said to revel in. That same year, the pair took over as managers of Le Constellation, which had opened in the early 2000s, but only as a basic cafe bar. They set about renovating it themselves, posting photographs of their work on a dedicated Facebook page, which has since been shut down. In one image, Jacques Moretti can be seen smiling at the camera from inside the two-story bar, the interior of which was demolished by a digger before being rebuilt and lined with wood to give the feel of an alpine cabin. Other images show the narrow staircase up, which hundreds of youngsters desperately attempted to escape on January 1st.
Et là, il y a une seconde. Wesh!
The ceiling of the basement was stripped back before the addition of dimpled acoustic insulation foam to avoid disturbing residents living in apartments above the bar. That foam is now widely believed to have been fatally ignited by sparklers in champagne bottles on the night of the fire. A Swiss investigating source with knowledge of local government administration in Crans, Montana, told the Daily Mail this week. With a change of management, the bar was gradually used as a nightclub, despite not having a specific permit to operate as one. This fact is now key to the manslaughter inquiry against the Morettis. The bar, known as Le Constel to its loyal clientele, soon became popular among teenage skiers and students from nearby Le Regent International School. 5 years later, in 2020, the Morettis opened a second venue, Lucenso, a burger bar in the resort. In 2023, they launched an upmarket Corsican-themed restaurant, Le Vieux Chalet in Lens, a Swiss village that is also part of the Crans, Montana region. The couple own a house in Lens and another property on the French Riviera. While the pair have insisted that they operated within the law, lawyers for families of the victims are now asking a growing number of questions about where exactly the Morettis got all their cash. According to one lawyer, they spent around £2.7 million on property in recent years. According to financial records accessed by Swiss lawyer Sebastian Fanny, who is representing some of the victims, they paid 40,000 Swiss francs, around 37,000 pounds, a month in rent for 7 years before buying Le Constellation in 2022 without a mortgage. They then bought Lucenso in 2023 and finally Le Vieux Chalet. Mr. Fanny described Mr. Moretti this week as a shady character whose practices raise questions. I don't have a single foreign client who moves to Switzerland without taking out a mortgage, and I've been a notary for 26 years. We don't know where Mr. Moretti's money comes from, he said. He added, Do you know how many coffees and bottles of champagne you have to sell to pay 40,000 francs a month in rent? The key question is who, ultimately, is to blame for the inferno. In its immediate aftermath, Jacques Moretti claimed he followed all safety regulations. It has since transpired, however, that no fire inspections have been carried out at Le Constellation for the past 6 years, despite the fact it counted as a high-risk location. We bitterly regret this, Kranz, Montana Mayor Nicholas Farad said this week, adding he couldn't explain why the inspections, which should have been yearly, had not been carried out. During previous inspections, including the last in 2019, the soundproof foam was never tested. According to Mr. Farad, it wasn't considered necessary. He added that he and his team were unaware the bar was using the kind of fountain sparklers said to have caused a fire. But others were and had raised concerns, among them a former waitress, called Sarah, who said this week she quit due to safety concerns. A video filmed in Le Constellation on New Year's Eve in 2019 showed revelers carrying bottles of vodka loaded with ice fountain sparklers, with a waiter calling out to one holding a bottle dangerously close to the ceiling. "Watch out for the foam! Watch out for the foam!" Sarah said, "I worked a few months as a waitress before leaving for several reasons. I refuse to do a lot of things. This practice, encouraging customers to buy champagne bottles, seemed extremely dangerous to me. I categorically refused to sit on shoulders for the show because I was afraid my hair would burn. It's dangerous because of the balance, the stairs, there's a crowd, and then people are very drunk." She said the emergency exit was kept locked with staff, ordered not to unlock it except to go upstairs to an apartment above the bar. She said she only saw fire extinguishers in an office that was often locked. Another former bar employee called Maxime told French TV that extinguishers were kept in a locked room at the bar. "I always said that if waitresses held up sparklers and they came into contact with the ceiling, everything could go up in flames. There was definitely a risk, and the safety measures were a bit dicey. Staff weren't briefed on fire safety, and the emergency exit was sometimes blocked or locked." According to a French broadcaster, French bar manager Gaten Thomas, Gilbert, 28, who was severely burned in the fire, had previously told his father of his concerns about safety at the venue. Jean Michel Gilbert said his son told him in November that he wanted to quit his job, but ultimately decided to stick it out until the new year. He is being treated in a Paris hospital for third-degree burns and only came out of coma this week. What seems clear is that given the bar's habit of promoting the use of fountain sparklers, the fire was an accident waiting to happen. Mr. Moretti was not at Le Constellation on December 31st. His wife, who was in charge, sustained a burn to one arm as the blaze tore through the bar at around 1:30 a.m. on January 1st, causing a mass stampede, which left dozens crushed and dying. Media outlets in France and Italy this week reported Mrs. Moretti was captured on security cameras, fleeing with the cash register. Italy's La Repubblica said she had fled with the cash register containing the evening's takings. French news site Public said, CCTV footage reportedly shows the bar owner leaving the premises with the cash register shortly after the start of the incident. If this allegation is true, Mrs. Moretti could face further criminal charges, including failing to assist people in danger. Meanwhile, another former employee told French media that Jacques Moretti ordered staff to turn the beer taps off and fill glasses with cans from Aldi, and that empty bottles of Grey Goose vodka were refilled with a cheaper version. Staff were also paid partly under the table in cash to compensate for working more hours than they should. The Morettis face up to 20 years in prison if charged and found guilty of manslaughter. But as Jacques Moretti's father said yesterday, the couple are sentenced to life with this story. "It's the first time in my life that I've seen Jacques cry," he told Le Figaro. "I know my son, he would never run away. It is his honor. We think of the victims. We also lost loved ones and people we loved. We cry every day." On Tuesday, the Morettis pledged their full cooperation with investigators. "We will under no circumstances attempt to evade these matters," they said. Meanwhile, a growing mountain of floral tribute sits outside Le Constellation, many accompanied by messages written by those affected by the tragedy. Among them are grieving parents and those whose injured children have been left burnt, in some cases beyond recognition. An explanation about what happened that night is surely the very least they deserve.